Welcome back to the Explanation Pro. In a small town in the countryside of the United Kingdom, there lived a man named John. His place is a complete mess, with alcohol bottles everywhere. He takes a sip from another glass of liquor and calls his daughter through his laptop. As they are talking, his daughter Sadie suddenly hears the rattling of big chains in his father's place. He is completely spooked by her words, and so he looks down at his table to check where the sound is coming from, before taking off his necklace and placing it somewhere behind him. He quickly ends the call with her daughter, and quickly goes to where the sound of a crying baby is. In the middle of a kid's room, he sees a doll on the ground and picks it up. As he caresses the doll, he suddenly catches sight of a human hand. However, as he pulls it, the hand reveals that it is dismembered with blood still dripping from it. At that moment, an unknown creature growls at him and chases after him. He rushes upstairs and begs the creature to leave her daughter alone, before finally ending his life by hanging on a rope. After John's mysterious death is made known by many, his daughter Sadie comes to his home to look over his remaining belongings. As she enjoys some snacks in the kitchen, a mysterious man is seen entering the home, which is caught by one of John's numerous CCTVs at home. The man then pops up behind her and explains that he knows her father as well. He offers her a job to be a photographer for the papers, to which she accepts and eats again as the man leaves. Later that night, she explores her father's home and discovers screens of the CCTV cameras. She stares at one of the screens and sees a door upstairs moving on its own when suddenly, the electricity goes off. A crying baby is also being heard throughout the house, and being a curious young woman, she follows it upstairs. She then enters her old room and reaches for something under her bed. The sound was actually coming from her favorite doll, and so she hugs it tight while reminiscing memories with it. The following morning, she rides a cab to apply for the work that Dan offered to her. She talks briefly with the cab driver and looks at the scenery outside, which is full of moors and old structures of buildings. At the office, Tony interviews her and quickly accepts her resume, explaining that he owed it to her father who had made huge headlines with his folklore Padfoot articles. She is then assigned to her father's office, where she witnesses Dan and Faye getting heated up inside the room. Before leaving, she kisses her fiancé Dan, and the two sit down parallel to one another as if nothing had happened. The telephone then rings, to which Dan answers it since Sadie doesn't bother to pick it up. He then shows annoyance towards the person to who he's speaking, since they have to interview a nutcase person on Sadie's first day of work. They continue to meet with their interviewee, with her taking pictures of the view, where she suddenly sees something burning from afar. After seeing it, her camera's battery suddenly runs out, to which Dan scoffs at her, but she explains that she has more batteries in her bag. They finally reach the interviewee's house, whose name is Craig. He starts to interview him and Craig claims that he knows who has the well-known demon eye in town. As he continues to question him, Sadie checks the photos in her camera. She is confused to see a figure within the flames on the hill, and as she looks closely at it, a hand suddenly strangles her by the neck. She feels as though it's real, but she acts like it was nothing when Dan and Craig are puzzled by her actions. All of a sudden, Craig starts to provoke her by saying that her father was murdered. Not able to control her emotions, she yells at him and quickly leaves. As they go back to her father's place, Dan tries to comfort her and prevent Craig's words from polluting her mind. He then admits that he also misses John, as much as she misses him, wherein his words completely cool her down. She then chugs down some alcohol as she takes her medicated pills. After their heated argument, Dan then invites her to smoke with him, to which she agrees. The two then get high together, and Dan proceeds to tell her a famous folk story in town, about a young weaver named Sally. Her dog had woken her up in her sleep, and she is suddenly used by a higher being to grab her father's tool to create an eye-shaped necklace using a piece of tin. She then preaches to many that a higher being had spoken to her, telling them that the Moor will experience great famine if they don't turn their backs on their sin. The townfolks refuse to believe her and label her as a witch. In the end, they took her eyes out and burned her alive while she and her dog are being chained together. All of a sudden, their closeness then changes to kissing one another due to their uncontrollable feelings. However, Dan tells her that what they are doing is wrong. As he leaves, she starts to throw a tantrum alone and blames her father for what she has become. She then goes to the bathroom and attempts to hurt herself using a pair of scissors, when her phone rings along with the cries of a baby again. She goes to her room and slumps to her bed due to exhaustion as she holds onto her phone. The following day, she can be seen as quite weak and timid. She then stops by her tracks and removes hair from her mouth. After that, she meets with Dan and Faye, but due to her condition, they fail to finish their work there. Back at the office, she couldn't find good pictures for their papers and shows them instead a picture of her cutting her fat. This leads to Faye continuing to bully her. As she walks away, Faye insists on kissing Dan as she watches, but her actions annoy Dan, resulting in him pushing her away and taking Sadie with him. He then takes her with him to his home, to which she starts to get uncomfortable seeing that Dan's mother looks at her differently. As Dan gets his laptop, she follows a barking sound inside his house and accidentally overhears Dan's mother warning him to stay away from her since she is full of troubles along the way. He ignores his mother and takes her with him to the car. Out of curiosity, she asks him whether they have dogs at his house. However, Dan tells him that he hates dogs so they don't have any, which confuses her since she is sure that she had heard a dog at his house. Back at her home, she goes to wash up first before continuing their work together. He then starts to look at John's papers and eventually enters the room with screens from the CCTV cameras. Like what Sadie had seen before, he also sees a bedroom door moving on its own. As he is puzzled by this, the towel that covers the CCTV in the bathroom suddenly falls, making him see Sadie taking a bath. Seeing this, she tries to seduce him but is petrified to discover a head inside her bathtub. The electricity fails again, to which Dan quickly comes to her aid. He proceeds to lead her to her room and even asks her whether she wants him to sleep beside her, to which she shyly agrees. The two then talk with one another on Sadie's bed, where she admits seeing things whenever she fails to drink her medications. She also tells him about seeing her father be wounded by a mysterious man who is wearing a skull mask, which scars her memory ever since. As they know each other more, Dan can't help but lean on her and kiss her. Unfortunately, Dan stops after a while, saying that they should take things slowly, and falls asleep together. The next day, an eerie feeling is felt throughout the room, as a deformed hand starts to touch her leg, which wakes her up. She then answers her phone, where her mother checks up on her daughter, eventually leading to her realizing that she is late for work. On her way to work, he converses again with the cab driver, asking him if he knows where the burned girl was buried, to which he replies that only Craig knows it. As she goes to work, her boss Tony is furious at her for being late and unable to create a headline for their papers. He also explains how no one is able to make him coffee, since Faye is breaking down about her and Dan having an affair. He demands that they give him something until 8 p.m., or else they will both be fired. She then meets up with Dan, who says that he has a lead about the demon eye, and Craig might have it. Eager to save them from getting fired, they meet with Craig again, who asks for a beer in exchange for the demon eye. With no other choice, he eventually goes to buy him a drink. While he's gone, Sadie asks Craig about his father being murdered, to which Craig answers that he is the one who murdered John by giving him the demon eye. Frustrated from hearing this, she then calls out for Dan. Unfortunately, she experiences hallucinations once again as she sees the two men beside Dan having burned faces looking at her. She then leaves them and rummages in her office, where she eventually decides to place the demon eye inside Dan's drawer. As she's about to go, Faye suddenly comes at her and accuses her of having intercourse with her boyfriend. She then admits that she's pregnant, and told Sadie that she'll never see Dan again since she already had her fun with him. Provoked by her, she picks up the demon eye again to make a bad wish about Faye. Before leaving the building, Faye takes the keys from her. As the door closes, Faye instantly hears a baby's loud cries. She checks where the sound is coming from, and there she sees a dismembered baby doll full of blood. After that, she looks down the flight of stairs and sees the burned girl eerily sliding through the floor. This greatly scares her and makes her run away. Unfortunately, the beast eventually attacks her, leading to Faye falling to her death. Back at home, Sadie rushes to pack her things and leave town, when she suddenly sees Dan sitting at her home as well. Their conversation quickly changes to the both of them finally showing their true feelings to one another, leading to them heating up quickly. All of a sudden, an unknown man knocks him unconscious from behind. She struggles to get out of the mysterious man's grip by biting him, but she is instead knocked unconscious as well. A previous video by John suddenly shows up, where he explains that the only way to escape the terror of the burned girl and her dog is by burying the demon eye in her grave and blood shedding in the shrine John had made in his basement. The man who had tied them up is actually Craig. Craig then slashes Dan's chest, where she remembers a memory in her childhood, where she saw her father being slashed in his chest as well by a man wearing a skull mask, who is also Craig. He continues to talk to them both and spills the truth to her, saying that she and Dan are siblings. Dan admits that he knows the truth as well, but he couldn't suppress his feelings for her. Craig then continues to ask her about the demon eye and where did she hide it. She then sees the screen of the CCTV cameras showing paranormal signs again, to which she lies about the demon eye being under her bed. While Craig's away, they quickly cut their ropes to escape, with them kissing one another even though they're siblings. Hearing Craig's screams, she rushes to get the demon eye from her bag and commands Dan to bury it in the burning girl's grave, while she buys him time. While he goes alone to bury it, she starts to see things again, like her old self who is naked on the bed, the burning girl crawling to her on the stairs, hearing Dan's voice, and seeing an eyeless Craig who shot his head with a gun. In the basement, she also sees a disfigured Faye who blames her for murdering her. While all these are happening to her, Dan, who is also being chased by the beast, successfully finds the burning girl's grave and quickly buries the demon eyes. Back to Sadie, she finally sees her father with no eyes and is still hanging on his rope. John then tells her to give her eyes to the burning girl, and with no other choice and is scared for her life, she suddenly pokes both her eyes using a scissor. Weeks later, the event left her permanently blind, and she chooses to go back home. But as the fate of her father doesn't seem to leave her, the cab driver sees the demon eye and thinks that it's a medal. Unknown to her, she instructs the driver to put it in her bag, leading to the curse never leaving her. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and also subscribe my channel for more videos like this. See you in the next video.